There comes a point in life where you must stop chasing, stop pleading, stop explaining yourself to those who will never truly hear you. There is immense power in restraint, in silence, in letting the storm pass without lifting your voice. The world teaches us from the beginning to prove, to run, to justify our existence, to beg for love, to chase validation, to explain our every move in fear of being misunderstood. Yet the moment you step out of this frantic dance, something remarkable begins to unfold. You start to feel the weight lift, the fog clear, and the quiet authority of your own being emerges. You realize that nothing in life truly demands chasing, only aligning. To never beg does not mean arrogance. It means understanding your worth so deeply that you no longer kneel for what is already beneath your dignity. Begging implies lack, and lack is an illusion created by comparison. You were never incomplete, never empty, only distracted from your wholeness. When you beg for attention, love, or validation, you declare to the world that you are void of it. Yet when you simply exist in stillness, radiating from the fullness of who you are, you attract without asking. The magnetism of peace is far stronger than the desperation of pursuit. Look closely at the people you admire most. Those who walk into a room and command respect without saying a word. What do they do differently? They do not beg. They do not chase. They do not explain. They are rooted in a quiet certainty. Their energy speaks long before their mouths open. The world listens not to their words, but to their silence. Because silence is not emptiness, it is depth. It is the sound of strength. It is the mark of someone who no longer fears being unseen. When you stop begging, you stop giving away your power. You stop handing the key of your peace to others, waiting for them to unlock your happiness. You begin to realize that no one owes you recognition. No one owes you closure. No one owes you understanding. The universe responds not to need, but to vibration. When you stand firm in your value, the world rearranges itself to match your energy. When you plead, you lower your energy to the level of lack. When you stand still, you rise above it. To never chase is to know that what is meant for you cannot be taken. Chasing is the symptom of fear. Fear that the world will forget you. Fear that opportunity will pass. Fear that love will leave. But what kind of love or opportunity requires you to run yourself into exhaustion? What kind of destiny must be forced to stay? The truth is, anything you must chase was never aligned with you in the first place. The things that are meant for you arrive with a natural ease, not because they require no effort, but because your energy and theirs flow in harmony. The more you chase, the further you drift from yourself. Because every chase implies that fulfillment lies somewhere else, in someone else, in something else. But fulfillment is not found. It is remembered. You begin to recall who you are when you stop running. You begin to see that the pursuit of anything external was never about the thing itself. It was a reflection of your own forgotten worth. And when you return to that awareness, you no longer chase. You attract. You no longer run after life. You allow life to meet you. To never explain is an act of liberation. The compulsion to explain comes from the desire to be seen as right, to be justified in your choices, to be approved of by others who have not walked your path. But there is freedom in letting people misunderstand you. Let them. Your peace is not up for public debate. The world will twist your silence, misinterpret your motives, label your calm as arrogance, your independence as coldness. But you must understand, people can only meet you at the level of their own perception. You are not here to shrink yourself into their comprehension. When you stop explaining, you begin living authentically. You stop diluting your truth to make others comfortable. You stop performing. You realize that no explanation is ever enough for someone determined not to understand you. So you conserve your energy. You smile, you stay silent, and you let your actions speak. The need to justify yourself fades, and in its place grows a quiet strength, a sense of inner knowing that does not require witnesses. And this is where silence becomes your superpower. In a world addicted to noise, your stillness terrifies people. Everyone is shouting to be heard, to be seen, to be relevant. But the one who remains silent becomes magnetic. Silence confuses those who rely on chaos to control. It unsettles those who expect reaction. When you are silent, you cannot be manipulated. When you are silent, you observe rather than absorb. You become the calm center of the storm. Silence is not weakness, it is mastery. It is the art of observing without being consumed. When you are silent, you listen more deeply, not just to others, but to life itself. You begin to sense the rhythm of the universe, the quiet intelligence behind every event, the voice beneath the noise. And that voice always whispers the same thing: you are already enough. You are already complete. You do not need to chase what is destined, nor explain what is divine. Silence teaches you patience. It shows you that everything unfolds when it must. It reminds you that nothing real can be rushed. The seed does not chase the sunlight, it simply grows toward it. The flower does not explain why it blooms. It just becomes what it was always meant to be. In the same way, you too must learn to stand still in your becoming, trusting that what is yours cannot be taken, and what leaves was never yours to keep. People will provoke you, misunderstand you, abandon you, test your limits. But your response is your power. When you choose silence over reaction, you protect your peace. When you stop chasing validation, you protect your energy. When you refuse to beg, you protect your dignity. And in protecting these things, you begin to live from a place of unshakable strength. You no longer need to prove your worth to anyone, because you finally understand that worth is not something to prove. It is something to embody. There will be moments when your silence is misread. They will say you are cold, distant, detached. But silence is not the absence of emotion. It is the presence of control. It is the refusal to let temporary feelings destroy permanent peace. Anyone can react, few can remain still. The world applauds loudness, but it is the quiet ones who move mountains. The universe listens to the silent heart more than to the noisy ego. You will find that once you stop explaining yourself, life becomes lighter. You no longer rehearse conversations in your head, trying to make others see your perspective. You stop being a prisoner of perception. You start living for truth, not approval. And the irony is, when you stop chasing respect, you earn it. When you stop seeking love, you find it. When you stop trying to be understood, you become undeniable. There is something deeply transformative about being misunderstood and staying calm. It shows that you are no longer ruled by your ego. You are no longer reactive. You understand that peace is more valuable than being right, that your silence can carry more truth than 1,000 explanations, that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. The most magnetic people are those who are not desperate to be liked. They are calm, grounded, self-assured. They do not force conversations. They do not chase affection. They do not argue to prove their worth. Their silence speaks for them, their energy introduces them, and their peace protects them. That is true power. Not the power of dominance, but the power of self-mastery. When you no longer chase, beg, or explain, your energy becomes pure. You begin to attract only what aligns with your stillness. The chaos of others no longer pulls you in, because you no longer resonate with it. You become selective, not out of arrogance, but out of understanding that peace is sacred. You start guarding your time, your mind, your space, because you've learned that what you allow is what continues. Life is a reflection. If you beg, life will make you beg. If you chase, life will run from you. If you explain endlessly, life will send you people who never understand. But if you stay silent, grounded, and aware, life will begin to come toward you, not as a favor, but as a natural response to your alignment. The energy you put out determines the energy you receive. The world often confuses silence with surrender, but silence is not giving up. It is rising above. It is choosing observation over reaction. It is choosing peace over participation in meaningless conflict. It is the decision to no longer waste your sacred energy on what cannot be changed. You realize that the noise of others says nothing about you and everything about them. You no longer need to defend yourself against misunderstanding, because truth defends itself in time. There's an old wisdom that says, do not explain yourself to anyone. Your friends don't need it, and your enemies won't believe it. This is the essence of freedom, to live without needing constant validation. The moment you realize that people's opinions cannot add or subtract from your truth, you are free. Free to live, to create, to love without attachment. Free to walk away when peace is disturbed. Free to exist as you are, unapologetically. To live this way is to embody grace under pressure. It means you can walk away without resentment, let go without fear, and remain silent even when provoked. It means you trust the flow of life enough to not fight for what must end or force what is not yet ready. You understand that begging for closure, chasing affection, or explaining your worth only delays your peace. You let things fall apart when they must, knowing that what is real will rebuild itself. You come to see that silence is not a void. It is a mirror. In silence, you face yourself. You meet your fears, your insecurities, your ego. You learn to sit with discomfort without escaping it. And in that stillness you grow. You begin to see life not as something to conquer, but as something to understand. Not as a chase, but as a dance, one where you move gracefully with what comes and let go of what goes. When you master silence, you master yourself. You no longer depend on external noise to define your value. You no longer chase outcomes to feel secure. You no longer explain your every choice to feel accepted. You become anchored in your own being, steady, unbothered, whole. This is where your true power lies, in stillness, in presence, in silence that does not beg to be heard, but is impossible to ignore. The secret is simple. Never beg, never chase, never explain. Let your silence do the heavy lifting. Let it shield you, guide you, and speak for you. In a world that shouts for attention, your calm will be your crown. Your quiet will echo louder than words ever could. Because when you stop running from yourself, the universe starts running toward you. When you stop speaking to be understood, you begin to understand everything. And when you stop begging for love, you become love itself. There is something extraordinary that begins to happen when you no longer depend on the world to affirm your existence. You become lighter, freer, almost untouchable. The opinions, the noise, the constant rush of external validation begin to lose their grip on your soul. You start to breathe differently, deeper, slower, with an awareness that you are no longer bound by the expectations that once controlled you. You no longer need to chase, because you have realized that the moment you do, you tell the universe you do not have it, and what you declare, consciously or not, is what you receive. Life mirrors your belief, and when you live as though nothing is missing, you attract everything meant for you. To live without begging, Chasing or explaining is to exist in alignment with your essence. It means you have stepped beyond the illusions of scarcity that govern most people. You no longer see others as competitors, but as reflections. You no longer measure your worth by comparison, because you know that nothing real can ever be taken or diminished. You walk with a calm sense of sufficiency, not arrogance, but peace. And in that peace, people feel something different in your presence. They feel the weight of authenticity, the quiet gravity of someone who does not need to prove. There is power in non-resistance, in the art of letting things come and go without clutching at them. This is not indifference, it is wisdom. It is understanding that grasping is the root of all suffering. When you beg, you cling. When you chase, you run from yourself. When you explain, you surrender your authority. Each of these actions is a subtle confession of insecurity. But when you choose silence, you reverse the current. You no longer chase the current of the world. You become the still ocean beneath it. Observe how nature behaves. The tree does not chase the wind to prove its strength. It stands tall and lets the wind reveal it. The river does not beg for direction. It flows naturally toward its destiny. The sun does not explain why it shines. It simply radiates because that is its nature. This is the way of true power, effortless, calm, yet unstoppable. When you begin to embody that same rhythm, you stop fighting for things that are already on their way. You stop forcing outcomes that are not yours. You stop explaining your light to those committed to living in darkness. There is a sacred kind of silence that comes from understanding. It is not the silence of suppression or fear, but the silence of mastery. It is the silence that knows exactly what to say, but chooses peace instead. It is the silence that observes the chaos around it, yet refuses to become part of it. This silence is not empty. It is full of clarity, full of self-awareness, full of a deep understanding that you gain nothing by trying to control the uncontrollable. It is the silence of someone who has stopped playing games and started living truth. When you stop explaining yourself, something beautiful happens. You begin to live your truth unapologetically. You stop filtering your words to make them palatable for others. You stop seeking permission to exist. You stop editing your light to fit into someone else's shadow. You realize that you were never meant to convince anyone of your value. You were meant to embody it. Those who are meant to understand will feel it. Those who cannot were never meant to stay. And when you stop chasing, the energy that was once spent in anxiety returns to you as power. You reclaim your focus, your time, your strength. You begin to notice things you once missed. The beauty of stillness, the richness of the present moment. The chase had blinded you to what was already within reach. In stillness, you see clearly that life has always been unfolding in your favor. Even what you lost was only clearing space for what was real. The world often tells you that silence is weakness, that you must fight, argue, and justify yourself. But this is not true strength. It is noise disguised as power. True strength requires no announcement. It moves quietly, confidently, without validation. The lion does not roar to prove it is king. It simply is. In the same way, when you stop announcing your worth, the world begins to sense it on its own. You become like gravity, unseen but undeniable. To live in silence is to trust that the truth does not need defenders. It simply waits. Time has a way of revealing what is real. Lies collapse under their own weight, but truth stands effortlessly. When you stop explaining, you are saying, I trust time. I trust life. I trust that what I am will be seen when it must. This trust frees you from the exhausting cycle of trying to manage how others perceive you. You begin to live with grace graceful in speech, graceful in withdrawal, graceful in silence. There will always be moments when your instinct is to respond, to prove, to correct the misunderstanding. But the moment you act from that place, you fall into the same noise you tried to rise above. Power is not in reaction, it is in restraint. The one who can hold silence when provoked has already won. Because silence, when chosen consciously, is not absence. It is presence multiplied. It is awareness so strong that it no longer needs defense. People who live loudly often do so to hide their insecurity. Those who live quietly have made peace with themselves. They do not fear being unseen because they see themselves. They do not beg for love because they are love. They do not chase because they understand that what is meant to stay will find its way. The still person is not lazy, they are aligned. They do not move out of desperation, they move out of intention. They know that every action not rooted in peace creates distortion, and so you learn to wait, not passively, but purposefully. Waiting is an act of faith, not stagnation. To wait without begging or chasing is to declare to life, I trust your timing. And life always rewards those who wait in alignment, not in anxiety. The silence during waiting is not empty time. It is sacred preparation. The universe works in the unseen, and silence is its language. When you are quiet enough, you begin to hear its rhythm. Its whisper guiding you toward what is meant to be yours. There will be people who test your silence, who mistake your calm for weakness. Let them. Their noise is a reflection of their chaos, not your peace. You are not here to participate in every battle, especially those that lead nowhere. Sometimes the highest form of intelligence is to walk away, not out of defeat, but out of awareness that not all wars deserve your energy. Silence is the sword that cuts through illusion without ever drawing blood. When you stop explaining, you also begin to understand others more clearly. You start to see that everyone's noise comes from their pain, their fear, their unresolved stories. You no longer take their words personally. Their misunderstanding of you becomes irrelevant because you see through it. You see that what they project has nothing to do with you. You stop arguing with projections. And that detachment, that calm distance, is the beginning of true freedom. Freedom is not the ability to say whatever you want. It is the ability to stay silent and still feel whole. It is to know that your worth is untouched by misunderstanding, untouched by silence, untouched by distance. When you reach this point, you become dangerous in the most beautiful way. Dangerous to the ego, dangerous to manipulation, dangerous to fear. Because nothing and no one can pull you out of your center. To never beg is to honor yourself. To never chase is to trust life. To never explain is to know your truth. To remain silent is to command presence without effort. When these four states become your nature, you transcend the noise of the world. You begin to move differently, slower, steadier, lighter. You begin to notice that your silence disturbs those who rely on your reaction. They will call you indifferent, detached, uncaring. But these are the words of those who cannot control you. When you are silent, you are ungovernable. You are no longer pulled into the narratives that drain you. You are no longer trapped in emotional exchanges that lead nowhere. You conserve your energy like a precious resource, spending it only where it multiplies. And as you protect this inner peace, you begin to radiate an energy that others can feel. People may not understand you, but they will respect you, because energy never lies, and your silence will speak in ways your words never could. The mind often fears silence because it exposes what is hidden. But to embrace silence is to face yourself honestly. It is in silence that you meet your truth, the raw, unfiltered version of who you are beneath all roles and identities. And once you see that truth, you cannot go back. You begin to act differently, love differently, speak differently. You stop fighting battles that no longer serve your growth. You stop forcing connections that disturb your peace. This is where solitude becomes sacred. You no longer see being alone as loneliness, but as strength. You realize that solitude is where the soul remembers itself. You find comfort in your own company. You no longer seek distraction because you are no longer running from anything. You sit in silence not to escape the world, but to listen to it more deeply. The noise outside fades, and the voice within becomes clear. That voice does not shout, it whispers, it guides. It says, "Be still. You are enough." And from this stillness, a new kind of power rises. The power of detachment. You begin to see that you can love without clinging, care without controlling, exist without proving. You no longer beg for reciprocation because your giving is no longer transactional. You give freely, knowing that energy always returns to its source. You do not chase affection because you understand that real love flows naturally, not forcefully. You do not explain your worth because you embody it effortlessly. In silence, you see that everything you ever sought outside of yourself was simply a mirror guiding you back inward. The love you begged for was the love you had not given yourself. The validation you chased was the reflection of your own unacknowledged power. The explanations you offered were your attempt to make others see a truth you hadn't yet fully claimed. But once you see it, truly see it, the need for external confirmation vanishes. You become whole again. The still soul does not need applause. It does not need to be seen to feel alive. It knows that the ocean does not beg the shore for acknowledgement. It simply continues to rise and fall in its natural rhythm. And that is what you are called to do. To flow, to rise and fall, to move with grace through every season of life without begging for anything to stay. For what is real never leaves, and what leaves was never real. So you walk in silence, not because you have nothing to say, but because you have said enough. You stop running, not because you are tired, but because you have arrived. You stop explaining, not because you are hiding, but because you have realized that truth does not need translation. You no longer chase the wind, you become it. You no longer beg for light, you realize you are it. And in that realization, the world begins to bend toward your calm. Your silence becomes your signature. Your peace becomes your power. Your stillness becomes your statement. And without saying a word, you teach others what true strength looks like. There is a kind of beauty in moving through the world quietly, with a calm that unsettles those who cannot find it in themselves. The more deeply you settle into silence, the more you begin to see that the world runs on noise. Endless chatter, opinions, and judgments that cloud the simplicity of truth. You see how people exhaust themselves explaining what does not need to be explained, fighting to prove what will eventually prove itself, chasing things that are already decaying as they run toward them. And you begin to feel compassion, not superiority, for you too once lived that way, addicted to proving, desperate to be seen, mistaking movement for progress. Now you know that silence, the stillness within you, is where real life begins. When you no longer beg for understanding, something in you softens. You stop expecting the world to meet you where you stand. You stop pleading for someone to see your goodness, your effort, your love. You simply give what you can and then let it go. The act of giving becomes pure when it's freed from expectation. When you no longer beg for love, the love you give transforms from demand to offering. It no longer chains you to outcomes. you understand that love is not something to be received, it is something to be remembered. And remembering it means realizing it has always been flowing through you. The same applies to respect. You do not need to chase respect from others when you already carry self-respect within. Those who cannot see your worth cannot take it from you either. The moment you stop demanding respect, the universe begins to arrange circumstances to show you where you were giving your power away. People fall away, situations crumble. And though it may seem as though everything is falling apart, you soon realize that only the illusions are breaking. What remains is truth, the relationships, the opportunities, the energy that resonates with your silence. There is a saying that silence cannot be misquoted. When you stop explaining, you stop offering the world new ways to misunderstand you. You allow the dust to settle, the noise to fade, and in time truth stands alone, unguarded, needing no defense. There is dignity in saying less. You begin to speak only when your words add peace, not chaos. When you open your mouth, it is not to react, but to reveal. Your silence teaches you to pause, to listen, to weigh your words against the weight of peace. And more often than not, silence wins. You will find that silence also reveals the true intentions of others. When you stop explaining yourself, you notice who genuinely seeks to understand and who merely listens to reply. When you stop chasing, you see who meets you halfway. When you stop begging, you see who offers without being asked. Silence creates a vacuum that only truth can fill. In that vacuum, people show you who they really are. You do not need to investigate, confront, or demand clarity. Their actions reveal it. This is the gift of stillness. It exposes all illusions. There is a deeper level to this silence, one that exists not just in speech but in thought. External silence is easy to practice, but internal silence is mastery. It means not chasing thoughts, not begging for meaning, not explaining every event that unfolds in your life. It is to observe without labeling, to allow without controlling. When you reach this level of inner quiet, the mind becomes your servant rather than your master. The noise inside dissolves, and what remains is awareness, pure, unshakable, infinite awareness. That awareness is the core of your power. This inner silence is what radiates outward as confidence. True confidence has nothing to do with how loudly you speak or how firmly you assert yourself. It is the serenity that comes from not needing to be heard to know that you are right. It is the calm assurance that your presence is enough, that your worth is not measured in responses or approval. You walk through life no longer burdened by the need to persuade. You simply live in truth, and truth requires no persuasion. There are moments in life when silence will be your only weapon. When others attempt to provoke you, to pull you into their chaos, to drain your energy through argument or manipulation, your silence will disarm them. They will expect reaction, they thrive on it. But your refusal to engage, your calm detachment, will leave them powerless, because noise feeds on attention and silence starves it. The one who can stay still when others are shaking has already won the battle. It is not always easy to practice this. There will be times when your heart burns with the desire to speak, to defend yourself, to correct the lies that others have told about you. But remember, every time you step into the mud to fight, you get dirty too. Your silence, though misunderstood in the moment, will always outlast their words. The truth has its own timing, and it always surfaces when the noise fades. In your silence, trust that timing. Chasing, on the other hand, is the enemy of peace. It creates a subtle tension in the soul, a feeling that you are always running toward something that is running away from you. The more you chase, the further it moves because the act of chasing declares that you do not already have it. The moment you stop, everything begins to move toward you, because your energy shifts from lack to sufficiency. This is not a metaphor, it is a law. The universe reflects your state of being. The energy of need repels, the energy of abundance attracts. You must learn to sit in the discomfort of waiting. To not chase means to trust that what is meant for you is already on its way. It means you can rest while the world rushes, breathe while others panic, trust while others grasp. This calm detachment is what makes you magnetic. People and opportunities are drawn to stability, not desperation. The one who waits with confidence becomes the center of gravity in every room. The one who chases becomes lost in motion, never finding rest. And yet there will be moments when your silence is tested, when the temptation to explain, to justify, to speak out is almost unbearable. You will want to shout your truth, to demand recognition, to prove your sincerity. But in these moments, pause. Remember that truth does not need your defense. The louder you shout, the more fragile your position becomes. Real power whispers. Real power sits quietly in the corner, knowing that time will speak louder than words ever could. The silence you cultivate is not about avoidance. It is about mastery. It is not passive, it is active observation. It is the decision to rise above rather than sink into the noise. It is knowing when to act and when to simply allow. There are times when silence is the most loving thing you can offer. To yourself, to others, to the world. Because silence gives space for truth to reveal itself, for emotions to settle, for wisdom to surface. When you stop explaining yourself, people may walk away. Let them. When you stop chasing, things may fall apart. Let them. When you stop begging, you may find yourself alone for a while. Let it happen. These are not losses, they are recalibrations. Life is clearing space for what is truly yours, and in the emptiness that follows, you will discover that solitude is not loneliness. It is restoration. It is where you recharge your energy, rebuild your boundaries, and reconnect with your essence. In silence, you learn to listen to what the world cannot hear. The subtle voice of intuition. It does not shout. It whispers through calmness. It is drowned out by chasing, by noise, by endless explanations. But when you are still, when your mind is quiet, intuition speaks clearly. It guides you toward what is real. It tells you when to stay, when to go, when to speak, when to remain silent. And when you learn to follow it, your life begins to move with ease rather than force. This silence also reshapes your relationships. You begin to attract those who match your peace rather than disturb it. You stop seeking intensity and start valuing consistency. You no longer confuse chaos with passion or attention with love. Your energy becomes selective, and so does your circle. You no longer chase people, you meet them halfway, and if they cannot meet you there, you let them go without resentment. That is the power of silence. It allows departure without bitterness, endings without drama. You become aware that silence heals. Every wound, every heartbreak, every disappointment, all of it begins to mend when you stop replaying the story in your mind. The mind is addicted to explanation, to trying to make sense of what happened, to rewriting the past in search of closure. But closure is not found in understanding why something happened. It is found in accepting that it did. Silence brings that acceptance. You stop asking, why, and start saying, thank you. You begin to trust that what left made space for something greater to enter. The less you chase, the more life begins to flow. Opportunities that once seemed far begin to approach effortlessly. People who once ignored you begin to notice. Situations that once frustrated you begin to resolve on their own. It's not magic, It's alignment. When you stop chasing, your energy aligns with ease, and ease attracts what struggle repels. You become like a calm river that flows around obstacles rather than fighting them. You move forward without force, and yet you reach further than ever before. And in your silence, you begin to understand a greater truth, that nothing in this world truly belongs to you. Not the people, not the possessions, not even your image. Everything is borrowed, everything is temporary. When you stop chasing and start observing, you see how everything comes and goes in its own time. This realization does not make you careless, it makes you wise. You cherish without clinging, give without expectation, live without fear of loss. Your silence becomes your sanctuary. It is where you retreat when the world becomes too loud, where you return to remember who you are beneath the noise. You do not need to justify this withdrawal. You owe no one an explanation for your peace. The world may not understand your quiet, but that is because it has forgotten its own. Silence is not a void. It is the birthplace of clarity, of creativity, of wisdom. Everything meaningful in life is born out of silence. To never beg, never chase, never explain. And to live in silence is not to withdraw from the world, but to engage with it differently. Consciously, deliberately, with grace. It is to understand that your energy is sacred. Your words are sacred, your attention is sacred. And that by protecting these things, you begin to live in harmony with the rhythm of life, rather than in resistance to it. You realize that silence does not mean absence of voice. It means presence of awareness. It is not a retreat from life, but a deeper participation in it. You listen more, feel more, understand more. You begin to sense the subtle currents that guide everything. You see that even in the stillness, everything is moving. Even in silence, everything is speaking. The entire universe communicates through quietness, and now you are part of that conversation. As you walk this path, you will find yourself smiling more often. Not because life has become easier, but because you have. You no longer need to chase happiness. You recognize it in the smallest moments. You no longer need to explain yourself. You rest in self-acceptance. You no longer need to beg for connection. Your energy draws the right souls naturally. Your silence has become a magnet, not a barrier. It invites peace, not loneliness. It becomes a quiet light that others feel drawn to without knowing why. And so you continue forward, calm yet strong, still yet alive, silent yet understood by life itself. You move through the noise of the world untouched, your peace intact, your silence radiant. You have discovered what few ever do, that true power is not in speaking, not in chasing, not in convincing, but in simply being. When all is said and done, the greatest lesson in this world is not about how loudly we can shout, but how deeply we can listen. The strength of a human being is not found in their ability to chase, to explain, or to demand recognition. It is found in their ability to remain centered in a world that constantly seeks to pull them away from themselves. Silence, once feared, becomes the fortress of the wise. When you cease to beg for attention, when you stop chasing what is not yours, when you refuse to justify your every step to those who misunderstand you, you begin to stand upon the solid ground of your own being. The world becomes clearer, simpler, and infinitely more peaceful. The one who never begs is the one who understands that abundance does not flow toward desperation. Life does not respond to the trembling hand that reaches out in panic. It flows toward the calm and steady heart that trusts its own timing. Begging is not merely asking. It is the subtle confession that we believe we lack. And when you believe you lack, you send that message into the fabric of reality, and reality reflects it right back. when you instead act from completeness, when you know that what is yours will never require begging, you align with a deeper law of existence, the law that everything in the universe moves toward balance, not chaos. To never chase is to understand that what truly belongs to you cannot run from you. It is to realize that when you chase something, you declare that it is outside you. But life, in its mysterious design, only gives you what you already contain in essence. The love you chase runs because you chase it. The success you grasp at hides because you grasp. Yet when you become still, when you stand with quiet confidence in who you are, the right things begin to find you. What you seek begins to seek you. This is not magic, it is the natural rhythm of existence. Stillness attracts, chasing repels. And to never explain is to understand that truth does not depend on the approval of others. You do not need to make sense to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. The one who spends life explaining themselves to everyone becomes exhausted, scattered, and small. There is great peace in understanding that your path is yours alone. Let people talk, let them assume, let them twist your story. None of that can touch the one who knows their own truth. Explanation is a form of chasing validation, chasing understanding, chasing control over how others see you. But when you stop explaining, when you simply live in quiet alignment with what feels right within you, you gain something no explanation could ever give: freedom. And in that freedom, silence begins to grow. At first, silence may feel strange. We live in a world addicted to noise, where silence feels like emptiness. But silence is not empty. It is full of wisdom, full of answers that can only be heard when the mind stops shouting. In silence, you begin to see patterns. The way people move, the way energy flows, the way truth reveals itself without words. Silence teaches you to trust your intuition. It reveals who you really are beneath all the noise of opinions, judgments, and labels. The person who learns to remain silent in chaos does not lose power. They become power itself. Their stillness unsettles those who rely on drama to feel alive. Their calmness disarms those who feed on reaction. When you are no longer controlled by the need to respond, you have mastered one of the highest forms of intelligence, the ability to choose peace over ego. Silence becomes your sword and your shield. It protects you from unnecessary battles, and it cuts through the illusions of the world without making a sound. When you no longer beg, you affirm your worth. When you no longer chase, you affirm your trust. When you no longer explain, you affirm your truth. And when you no longer react, you affirm your peace. These are the 4 pillars of unshakable inner power. Together, they transform you from a seeker into a creator. You no longer live by what the world gives. You live by what you emanate. You stop trying to control the waves and instead learn to ride them. You begin to notice something remarkable. The quieter you become, the more you see. The less you interfere, the more things fall into place. Life is not a race to be run, but a dance to be witnessed. Everything you chase eventually runs out of breath. Everything you wait for eventually arrives. The river of existence flows toward those who stop trying to dam it. You are not here to convince the world of your worth. You are here to embody it. Think of the tree that stands in the storm. It does not beg the wind to stop. It does not chase after sunlight. It does not explain its bending to the other trees. It simply remains rooted, trusting that the storm will pass and that its roots will hold. That is the essence of true power, rootedness. To be rooted in yourself is to be unshakable by the winds of opinion, circumstance, or rejection. There will always be people who misunderstand your silence, who see it as weakness, indifference, or pride. But silence is not the absence of care. It is the presence of control. It is knowing that not everything deserves your energy, not every argument deserves your words, not every loss requires mourning. Silence is the mature response of a soul that has outgrown the need for constant validation. When you walk through life with quiet confidence, you begin to sense a strange phenomenon. Things begin to flow in your favor without effort. People begin to respect you, not because you demanded it, but because you carried yourself with quiet dignity. Opportunities appear not because you chased them, but because you aligned with them. Silence allows space for new beginnings, for healing, for the unseen forces of life to work on your behalf. You become untouchable not by fighting, but by transcending. When they try to insult you, your silence dissolves the insult. When they try to provoke you, your calmness drains their power. When they try to control you, your detachment confuses their manipulation. This is the strength of those who walk in stillness. It is not arrogance, it is awareness. You no longer give away your peace in exchange for temporary victories. You no longer seek to prove yourself, because you know that truth, like light, does not need to announce itself. It simply shines. As you grow in this understanding, you begin to detach from the illusions of control. You realize that you cannot force love, cannot speed up destiny, cannot make anyone see your worth. You can only become so whole within yourself that the universe has no choice but to reflect that wholeness back to you. You attract not by demanding, but by being. You manifest not by begging, but by believing. The world will still test you. It will still send storms, distractions, and temptations to pull you back into noise. But each time you choose silence over reaction, trust over panic, stillness over struggle, you evolve. You move from chaos to clarity, from fear to flow. You begin to see that life is not against you. It is always guiding you toward yourself. Every rejection becomes redirection. Every delay becomes protection. Every loss becomes purification. The more you embrace silence, the more you understand that your energy is sacred. You do not have to attend every battle you are invited to. You do not have to explain every choice or justify every dream. You are not responsible for how others interpret your peace. You are only responsible for protecting it. In this space of silence, your perception sharpens. You begin to see through people's words to their intentions, through situations to their lessons, through difficulties to their hidden blessings. Silence refines your vision. It removes the fog created by overthinking, by emotional reaction, by fear. It gives you something that no argument or explanation ever could: clarity. And with clarity comes confidence, the kind that does not need to speak loudly, the kind that simply walks in knowing. That is the power of silence. It is invisible, but undeniable. It does not shout, yet it commands attention. It does not force, yet it transforms everything it touches. One day, you will look back and realize that the moments when you said nothing were the moments when everything changed. The times when you refused to chase were the times when the right things found you. The times when you stopped explaining were the times when your truth began to shine clearly. And the times when you did not beg were the times when you discovered your own power to create, to be whole. So walk quietly, but with depth. Speak less, but with truth. Expect nothing, but trust everything. The world may not understand your silence, but it will feel it. Because silence is not passive, it is presence. It is the language of those who have mastered themselves. It is the sound of strength that no noise can ever drown. You were never meant to beg for respect, to chase for love, or to explain your worth. You were meant to embody such peace, such quiet confidence, that these things naturally align with you. That is the art of being untouchable, the wisdom of true strength, the strength of silence.